All right. How are you guys? MBJ, tough crowd this morning? Were they a little rough for you? All right. I'm just seeing. I don't know. Sometimes these guys, we don't know how awake they are. We're glad you guys are here. We're starting a new series today. We also have a barbecue right after this, so especially if you're new, but really for anybody, just walk through those doors. And Joe, I think, is right out there grilling as we speak. So that should either excite you or scare you, the fact that Joe's doing the grilling. I don't know which. I'm sure he'll do a good job. He'll do a good job. So we're starting in Judges. Real quick, how many of you have never read the book of Judges? Put your hand up. You've never read the book. I'm not talking one verse. I'm saying you've never read the whole book of Judges. Okay, some of you are lying because you're saying you have read the whole book, and I don't believe you. Go ahead, put your hands down. How many of you have heard somebody do a whole series on the book of Judges? Okay, a couple people that are not youth. How many at a winter camp or a summer camp have they taught out of the book of Judges? Okay, a couple. Catriel was like that. You're confused. You don't know. All right. It's one of those books, I don't know why, it gets neglected a lot. And it's actually a really, really interesting book. We want you to kind of join in this process with us, because if we're just teaching you from the book of Judges, but you're not reading it and absorbing it and getting anything from it yourself, that's not a really good process. So we want you to be a part of things as well. So here's what we're going to do, because it's a book I feel like most of you haven't read, and I think it's something we need to get into. Anybody who reads a chapter a week. Actually, that'll take too long. Do a chapter a day. And you're going to do a chapter a day, and if you post either a verse or a comment, you could just say Judges chapter 1 on your Facebook. We'll give you credit for it as long as you actually read it. And then if you do that for the whole month, we'll give you a discount off a future trip. Say like a mission trip or a winter camp or something like that. It's not going to be like Six Flags because you don't have enough time for that. So, and here's how we'll know you did it. We can just scroll on your Facebook page. And some of you are like, but Dan, my parents don't let me have Facebook. I'm not cool enough yet, or I'm not old enough yet to do that. You can do what kids have done in the past. They just kept a journal. And people kept a journal and just said, here's day one, here's what I liked, my verse, and that counts too. So we just want you to kind of engage with us. So here's one of the big verses. I'm going to intro Judges, and then you're going to hear some of the cool stories in the next few weeks, kind of like what are some of the big stories in the book of Judges. But I'm just kind of introing it today. And Judges 21, 25, you don't have to turn there. This might be a familiar verse, but it's one of my favorite verses of the book of Judges because I think it talks about our culture today. It says this: everyone did what was right in their own eyes. So kind of at the end of the book of Judges, Judges 21, 25, there's this verse that's kind of saying, this is what life was like during this time for the nation of Israel. Everybody's kind of doing what's right in their own eyes. Now, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like that's our society today. How many of you agree that people are kind of doing whatever's right in their own eyes, okay? How many of you disagree? Okay, not just people start raising their hand. So it is a lot like culture today because people are kind of doing whatever they kind of want to do. The people are saying there's really no right, there's no wrong. The book of Judges really applies to us because the same thing that happened in the book of Judges is happening in our world today. I think it's pretty interesting. How many of you know the one country right now, I mean, there's a few others that could be kind of considered this, but there's one country that really doesn't have a civilized government. Does anybody know what that one country is in our world that doesn't? What? No, they do. They have a type of a government. Antarctica, but that's not really a country, but I get what you're saying. It's land. Yes. What? No, they do. I mean, what? No. Somalia. If you saw Captain Phillips, Somalia is one of the only places right now that's basically an anarchy. Every other place, like Antarctica is technically right, but it's not a country, and there's a few other places. Belgium actually just got a government, and there's a few other places, but Somalia has one, but it's in a real small part of it, and most of the country operates with no government. So they are literally doing this, whatever's right in their own eyes. That's what's going on in Somalia. Now, how many of you saw the movie Captain Phillips? Okay, that kind of, not everything's true in that, but that's kind of like basically what's going on there. They're making up their own rules. They're like, we don't have any money, we don't have any jobs, so we're going to go rob rich Westerners and stop as many ships as we need because we can do whatever is right in our own eyes. You wouldn't want to live in a place that had no rules. You wouldn't want to live in a place that had no law. You wouldn't want to live in a place that has no truth. That's a bad thing. Although, here we are 3,000 years later, and that's kind of the world we're living in. I mean, you guys face this at your school every day. People are doing what's right in their own eyes. And then here you are, some of you, trying to live counterculturally to that, and people are looking at you like you're so weird. Like, what? You're waiting to have sex till you're married? That's so weird. Like, why would you want to do that? What? You're not going to be involved in the party scene? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Everybody's involved in the party scene. Why wouldn't you want to do that? And so you're living in a culture where everybody is kind of doing what's right in their own eyes, because a lot of people are saying there really isn't any truth. There's no truth. And they're saying even if there was, we couldn't really know truth. So people are just kind of doing whatever they feel like doing. And it's called, there's many words for it, but relativism is kind of what it is. And it's basically saying all truths are equally valid. And so nobody knows what the absolute truth is. So if it's true for me, it's true for you. And that's kind of what was going on in the book of Judges, because they had truth and then they lost it. They had a path, they had a right way to go, and then in the book of Judges, you see that they lost it, and it shows you kind of what happened to them. So how many of you know there was a bad accident on the I-10 this week? A bunch of people died. There was that crazy dust storm. You were in it? Okay, so this will relate, because Kevin said he was actually in it. So as police officers come and they file a report, a bunch of people were injured, people died, all kinds of cars got smashed. The police officers have to find the truth. They have to find out. Everybody can be blaming. People could be like, Kevin caused it. People could be like, this person caused it. But the police officers, there has to be some truth there, because they have to know who to blame, who caused it. Was it the dust storm or was it negligence? Like, what was it? And also insurance companies need to know the truth. So our society operates on truth. If you go to the doctor's kind of asks you, like, what's going on? What are you feeling? What are your symptoms? And the point of that is in order to make a good diagnosis, he needs to know what's really going on here. He needs to come to the truth about what your problems are. So we have to have truth. Our lives have to operate on truth. And when a society removes truth and says everyone can do what's right in their own eyes, that's a really big problem. So that's kind of what's going on in the book of Judges. I wanted you to see that. And it's kind of like describing a little bit about what's happening in our country today, because our country is moving away from absolute truth and kind of turning more towards how they were running things in the book of Judges, everybody doing what's right in their own eyes. And you guys see it in your friends' lives, you see it in the school, we see it in our government. There's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So here's what's happening in Judges 1, and then we're going to look at Judges 2 today. Like I said, there's kind of a quick overview just to get you going so you know what's going on in the book of Judges, and then you're going to hear some really cool stories later. Judges 1 is basically talking about how the nation of Israel, you guys remember Joshua, Caleb, remember any of those guys? Remember this cool dude Moses? Okay, he led them into the promised land. Moses wasn't allowed, so Joshua kind of took them in. That's what's going on. Joshua took them in, and they started to get the promised land. Well, Judges is really a continuation of that. It's supposed to be how the nation of Israel gets the promised land, takes out all the Canaanites and their gods that they were worshiping, and says, this is our place, this is where we're going to set up shop, and they set up a new nation. Well, that's how it was supposed to go. But when you look at Judges chapter 1, and we're not going to go through it because there's all kinds of crazy names, and it would just take a really long time to go through all the different tribes and stuff like that. But basically, it talks about Israel's failure to do that. They didn't do that. They were supposed to go in there and do this, and yet they didn't. And they kind of disobeyed God. Well, they did a little bit, like they'd chase some people out, some of the Canaanite neighbors out, but then they'd also kind of hang with some of the other ones, and then they made excuses. Well, we couldn't get rid of this group, so now they're a part of us. And so what happened is you have all these nations that are now, and all their gods right there with Israel, and they're all kind of worshiping things together, and it caused the exact problem that God didn't want to happen. So he gave them specific commandments. He gave Joshua specific commandments, and the people didn't follow them. So that's kind of what's going on in Judges 1. So Judges 2, I want to show you this. If you don't have a Bible, you're going to be really lost, so pull out an app on your phone, put your hand up, and maybe one of the kind leaders will get you one. They'll rescue you if you don't have a Bible, because you're just going to be kind of here clueless if you don't see us. Go ahead, put your hand up. Maybe we have some leaders that can hustle back there and get a few Bibles. Judges chapter 2, if you're wondering, hey, I don't know where that is in the Bible, go to Deuteronomy, then go to Joshua, and you will discover Judges. Our leaders were moving kind of slow, so by the time they start reading, I think we'll already be there. But Judges 2, verse 1. Now the angel of the Lord went up from Gilgal to Bochum and said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land I swore to your fathers. I said, you'll never break my covenant, and you shall have no other covenant with the inhabitants of the land. You shall break down their altars. But you have not obeyed my voice. What is this that you have done? So now I say, I will not drive them out before you, but they shall become thorns in your sides, and their gods shall be a snare to you. As soon as the angel of the Lord spoke these words to all the people of Israel, the people lifted their voices and wept. And they called the name of the place Bochum, and they sacrificed there the Lord. When Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went each to his inheritance to take possession of the land. And the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great work that the Lord had done in Israel. And Joshua, the son of Nun, serving the Lord, died at an age of 110 years. And they buried him in the boundaries of his inheritance, in the hill country of Ephraim, north of the mountain of Gash. And all that generation were gathered with their fathers, and there arose another generation. This is interesting, has major implications for you. There arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served the Baals, and they abandoned the Lord, the God of their fathers, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt, and they went after other gods, from among whom the gods of the people were around them, and they bowed down to them, and they provoked the Lord to anger. Then they abandoned the Lord and served the Baals and the Ashtoreth, so the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he gave them over to plunderers who plundered them. And he sold them into the hand of their surrounding enemies so that they could no longer withstand their enemies. Whenever they marched out, the hand of the Lord was against them, as the Lord had warned, and the Lord had sworn to them. And the Lord raised up judges, hence the title of our book, so you're seeing kind of why the book is called that, who saved them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Yet they did not listen to their judges, for they whored after other gods and bowed down to them. They soon turned aside to the way of their fathers and walked and obeyed the commandments of the Lord, and they did not do so. Whatsoever the Lord raised up judges for them, the Lord was with the judge, and he saved them from the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge, for the Lord was moved to pity by their groaning, because they afflicted and oppressed them. But whenever the judge died, they turned back and were more corrupt than their fathers, going after other gods, serving them and bowing down to them. They did not drop any of their practices or their stubborn ways. Okay, so I need to get you guys back into this. So I set up a little bit, what basically was going on in Judges 2? Who wants to just say, like, this is kind of what was happening in Judges 2? Who wants to take a shot at it? I'll make you sound smart even if you aren't. Go ahead.
So basically, they all turned to the different gods. So there was a lot of conflict with the what was working and all this. And then he sent judges to help solve it. Every time a judge died, the next generation would be more stubborn and kind of go farther away from the Lord.
Exactly. Anybody else want to say anything or take a shot on that? That was really good. So basically what's happening here is exactly what she said. They didn't really obey God, so now they're intermingled with all these nations and their gods. Then, shocker, they start worshiping those gods. And so what happens? God gets angry at them. They get really sad. He allows a person to come in or a nation to come in and basically oppress them. They get really sad and they repent and say, God, we're so sorry what we did. He sends a judge to free them from the oppressor, and everything's cool as long as the judge is alive. But then when the judge dies, they go back and sin even more. Now, some of us, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Dan, this doesn't relate to me. You're wrong. That is you. That is me. That's what we do in our lives. When things are going well, sometimes we're thinking, man, I don't necessarily need God right now. And so we get into stuff. And then sometimes we get into stuff and we see the consequences of our sin. And we're like, oh, I don't want this. I thought I wanted this, but I don't really want this. And we feel really bad. And we go to God and say, I'm so sorry. I want forgiveness for this. And then Things are going really well for a while, and then we go after something else, and we chase after something else, and we think that'll give us fulfillment, and we realize it doesn't. And it's a pattern. It's a pattern that all of us get into. And so the story of Judges, it isn't just a story, it's our story. And I think we can all connect with it and relate to it because that's kind of what goes on in our lives a lot of times. So there's 4 observations from the first few chapters in Judges. I just want to make some brief observations. Like I said, this is an introductory message. You guys are going to get into some of these really cool stories. One of the most famous stories that some of you guys have heard, Samson, that's in the book of Judges. So we're going to get into some of those cool stories. But here's 4 quick observations. God is faithful to us despite our disobedience. So one of the things, and it's a pattern as you read the book of Judges, God's faithful to us even when we're not. And that should really encourage some of you today because some of you think you're kind of operating under this mindset that you've done so much that God must be mad at you, that God must be really disappointed in you, that how could God ever forgive me? I've done so much. And I even heard this the other day. Somebody was talking to me and they're like, you would have been so disappointed in me, Dan, if you knew some of the stuff that I've done. No, I actually wouldn't because I've done a lot of really bad stuff. And I've been forgiven by God's grace. And I know how God operates, that he has grace towards us and he forgives us. And so some of you really need to hear this. The nation of Israel, they're a lot like you, and God still had mercy on them. And he's faithful to them, and he's faithful to us even when we aren't faithful. So I hope that encourages you today. If you're just kind of coming in here, maybe you had a rough Saturday night, you're not feeling real good about where you're at spiritually, I just want to encourage you that God's still faithful even when we aren't. The next one is, sometimes we say we can't, while God is saying you won't. And this is kind of an interesting one. I really want you guys to get this. If you paid attention to nothing else I said, this one point will really help you. So in the book of Judges, what they're kind of saying there, at one point, they make this excuse in chapter 1, verse 19. I'm going to read it to you. And they say this to God, but also kind of to each other. The Lord was with Judah, and he took possession of the hill country, but he could not drive out the inhabitants of the plain because they had chariots of iron. And so what they were kind of saying is, yeah, God, we really would have done what you said, but they had chariots of iron, and that was kind of a deal breaker. I mean, we know you're a really powerful God, but I mean, they had chariots of iron. You can't handle that, God. So it just was kind of, it messed everything up. And so what they're basically saying is, we can't. And God's saying, it isn't a matter of you can't, because you have the all-powerful God on your side. You can do things. It's a matter of you won't. And that's kind of how it is in our lives. As I was like looking at this message, I'm like, that is me. There's so many times in my life, I say to God, I can't. And what God's saying to me is, Dan, actually, you won't. And here's how I want to make this really practical for you guys, because I really want to make sure you get this. So maybe you have a habit in your life right now, okay? If we're honest, a lot of us do have a habit that we don't like, we wish we didn't have. And here's what we're saying. Sometimes we say it to God, sometimes we say it to other people. We say, God, I can't break this habit. And what God says to us is, you won't break that habit. You can break the habit. You have the power to. You have the ability to, with my help, with other people's help, you can break it. You don't really want to. Some of you are in a relationship, or you've been in a relationship, and you're like, I can't get out of this relationship. I can't stop this relationship. I can't stop thinking about this person. I can't get them out of my mind. And God's saying to you, no, it's really you won't. I can help you. I can help you get over it, but you won't. Some of you, you have brokenness in your family. There's all kinds of stuff going on in your family, and you're like, I can't fix things in my family. I can't stop lying to my parents. I can't ease the tension that I have with my family. And what God is saying is, no, it's actually you won't do that, because I can do it. I can bring healing. I can fix things, but it's you right now walking in disobedience. And he's saying that to all of us because that's what we do at times. What is it in your life that God is saying you won't, and you keep making the excuse for and saying, I can't do this? Because I think we all have those things. The third one, God hates it when his people chase after idols. You're going to see this all through the book of Judges. It's like they keep getting into the same thing. As you're reading the story, you're like, really, guys? I mean, this pattern happens all the time. Like, why are you still doing it? And then I think God speaks to us through the scriptures and says, Dan, why are you still falling for it 3,200 years later? You, all these beautiful students you have here, you guys still fall after idols. Don't think the people in Judges are dumb because you guys are doing it 3,200 years later, even though you have all the stories right in front of you. We do the same thing. because we chase after idols. Idolatry is when we make a good thing, say it's an ability, a job, a sport, our grades, our popularity, our body, all those things can be really good things. So when we make a good thing into the ultimate source of our security, our identity, and our power. It's when we take a good thing and make it an ultimate thing in our life that becomes an idol. And you see this all through the book of Judges. They make idols and it messes up everything, becomes a snare to them, and it becomes a snare to us when we have idols in our life. I had this kid in my youth group one time, and he was different, really, really like genius level smart. He ran our tech stuff all the time, and just as a high school student, he could like fix anything, run anything, and so he was always kind of doing some crazy stuff. But this one time, he worked at a bank. He got a job as a high schooler, and by the time he was 18, he was making pretty good money at a bank, and by the time he was 19, he was making really good money at a bank, and he wanted to go to this youth event. And so he left his bank, true story, went to a phone booth, called in a fake bomb threat to the bank. This is a youth group kid who actually volunteered in our ministry, and said, called in a bomb threat, police got called, I mean, everything. It was like the bank got evacuated. And the reason he did that is he wanted to get out early so he could go to a youth group event. Now, that's bad on multiple levels, obviously, but I was really encouraged that he wanted to be at our youth group event that bad. But it was so many other bad things there. But he didn't get arrested for that little gem because he was already being investigated for stealing money from his bank that he was working at. Because this kid, he had something in his life that was an idol, and it was his car. And he had to have everything put on his car. Before Lee made it cool, this is 10 years ago, this guy had video game consoles like embedded in his car that you could play like the video games as you're driving, DVD screens that were coming down, every kind of rim and light and every imaginable thing. And he would come in and we'd be like, dude, your car is really cool. Like, where are you getting the money for this? And he's like, oh, I just make a lot of money at the bank. Yeah, he did. Took a lot of money from the bank. And so one day I got a call and it said, hey, this is the police department and we've just arrested so-and-so and he wants you to come and bail him out of jail. And I was mad because he was back there pretending like everything was going on when he had this idol in his life that he was spending all his money, all his time, all his attention on just to have a better car. Now that one's sad, and I read this, and it's almost as tragic. There's actually a website, some of you guys, hopefully you'll never resort to this. It offers a fake girlfriend for $750, okay? A website that offers a fake girlfriend for $750. I gotta read you this because you'll think I'm making this up, but I'm not. Tired of having a Facebook wall that's devoid of endearing messages from a lover? I know that is some of you. Sick of looking at a cell phone that has no I love you texts or sappy voicemails? If so, then the website Fake Internet Girlfriend may have an answer. Fake Internet Girlfriend is exactly what it looks like, a fake female persona that exists entirely online but communicates publicly with a customer as if she's a devoted lover. For a 3-month commitment of $250 per month, and that'll actually cost you less than a regular girlfriend, so that's kind of a good thing. The site will create a Facebook profile of an invented woman, then use it to leave personalized notes on the customer's Facebook page, while also leaving messages at his work, sending texts and recorded voicemails, and this is the best part. For an extra $100 per month, customers can order the Gamer Girl package, in which the girlfriend will join online gaming communities like World of Warcraft and EverQuest and play along with the customer. So you could have all that. Let me just say, if you are investing that kind of money and that kind of mental capacity to something like that, that's an idol. A girlfriend in your life is definitely an idol. And I hope you guys see that we have these kind of things all over the place in our society. People are chasing after these idols and they're robbing them, they're snaring them of the true life that God really wants us to have. All right, so the last point, the last observation I have, when we forget God, bad things happen in our lives and in our culture. Bad things happen in our lives and our culture. When we were reading Judges, I said this one phrase, this one verse that really stood out to me. And this is what I think is to you guys, and I hope God speaks to you on this. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord or the work that he had done for Israel. And so I just want you guys to know what people are saying about your generation. They're saying this is the generation almost that they're talking about in the book of Judges that doesn't know the Lord and that's kind of just doing what's right in their own eyes. And when you look about in our culture, you see all the terrible things going on when our nation's forgotten God and kind of just like the path that we're on and just we're destroying ourselves from the inside out. People always ask me, are you worried that the end of the world is coming? Are you worried about North Korea? Are you worried about China? I'm worried about America because we're destroying ourselves from the inside out because we've forgotten God. And you guys are a generation that could actually change that. And I think you have to decide, do I want to become part of the generation that just does what's right in their own eyes? Or do I want to be part of the generation that says, no, I know God and I want to go back to what truth really says. And I want to base my life on truth and not just doing what's right in my own eyes. Because really there's no long-term value in that. And a society can't last if that's the kind of attitude people have. So I pray as we go through the book of Judges, and I pray as you guys kind of read it, that you will start to think about some of these things. And they'll start to make an impact on your life, and they'll start to like kind of get in you. And you'll say, when you see people doing what's right in their own eyes, you'll be like, no, there's such a better way to live your life than that. And I want to tell you about it. So as the band's coming back up, I want to just do a couple things. Quick questions, get with the people around you. I want you to ask this. How does doing what's right in your own eyes cause problems with the people you're friends with in school or people you know at school? So kind of when people are doing what's right in their own eyes, how do you see it causing problems with people at your school? And then secondly, what are the things in your life you're saying, I can't, but God is actually saying you won't? So I want you to be like real. Okay, his first question is general, then we get a little more real. Okay, go discuss with one another for a few moments.